today, this show is all about, as goes Virginia, so goes the nation, holding the line for democracy. So let's go right and spotlight our first guest and say hello. Jamie Lockhart is here, Executive Director of Planned Parenthood Advocates of Virginia. Hey, Jamie. Yeah.
Hi, Catherine. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I love the pink. You're bringing it. And Han Jones also is here, Political Director. How are you doing, Han?
Feeling great. Thank you so much for having us here today.
Well, your work is so important. So we're so glad you're here because this has been on our mind a while. We see all these court cases coming across the nation, and we are so glad and grateful that you could be here to talk about the Supreme Court case and other things. So thank you. All right,
Absolutely.
Next up, my favorite new friend, Kellen Squire. Hello, Kellen. You're an ER nurse and also a former candidate for office. How are you?
Hanging in there.
Where are you? There you are. Oh, you're
Yeah.
outside now?
Yes, ma'am.
And is the chickens out yet?
Oh, you can kind of see them in the background there, I
Oh,
think.
that's right. Okay, good. We have some chickens with us today. Well, Kellen, you are no chicken. You have a brave voice in the grassroots. I love reading your articles that you write. So we look forward to hearing from you about what your view is on what this election is going to be like, and also how you're doing in the ER with the COVID recovery out there in rural America.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks, Kellen. And then next, who do we got in the room but Sara Ratcliffe? Sara, are you here?
I am.
Hi, Sara. So Sara, you're
Hi.
running in House District 58. We're so glad you're here.
Yep.
Good. And
Thanks.
just to let people know that Sara is out in Barboursville, and that sometimes the rural broadband is sort of touchy. So we'll be fine with that. So thanks, Sara, for being here. And then next
Appreciate it.
up, I don't know if did Qasim Rashid come in yet?
Not yet.
We don't know. Okay, so Qasim's not here yet. Hopefully he'll be showing up because are the human rights activist, lawyer, author, also a great pundit on what's happening across the nation on human rights. So let's hope that he makes it in the room. But we know who we do have on the room. We have Robin Zeph Warner of Postcards for Virginia.
Hello, hello.
Well, I'm sorry you can't come in to view without Monty or Phoebe.
Oh, no, I got Phoebe. I have Phoebe.
Okay, Phoebe's here. So
Phoebe's
Phoebe,
here. Phoebe is the Friday Power Lunch mascot.
she is the mascot. And so it's so great you have research to share with us on postcards, and we are excited that you're here to talk about that. And we'll check back with the cats.
Okay.
So thank you. Yeah, awesome. All right. So is that it? Oh, someone introduced my team. Okay. Stair, Ambassador Buzz. Hey, Stair, glad you're here, friend. Robin Zeph Warner, show wizard, and then Rosemarie Savino, new addition to our show support. How you doing, Rosemarie?
All good here in beautiful Northern Virginia.
Yeah,
The rain and the bugs.
Well, stay on. I want to make an announcement because our regulars every weekly show people that come into the room are probably wondering where Krista Jones is. And Krista Jones got a new job, and she can't appear on the Power Lunch with us. So we are heartbroken. One, we know you all love Krista and her voice in the room. She is really, it's incredible. We still are in denial. That's why we haven't said anything. We're still pretending she hasn't left the show for right now. So in the meantime, we're definitely going to try to find somebody to join us on the Power Lunch, but she's not replaceable in so many ways as the voice with us. So just wanted to share that with you. We hope to have her back to have a little goodbye, but we know we'll probably get her back. We're going to get her maybe another job is what she needs so she can be with us. But anyways, we miss you, Krista, if you can hear us. Okay, with that said, a little bit of updates and all the good stuff that makes the Power Lunch fun, because we love having you in the room. And we love just that you join us every week. So we appreciate it. So let's just start this conversation with, I think, is one of the most important. Qasim, I saw you come in the room. So good. Just want to make sure to say hi. I'm glad you're here.
Hey, good to be here.
Hey, good, thanks. This is so important. It's been on our minds really, forever about women's reproductive justice and healthcare. So we appreciate your advocacy in Virginia, but we really are worried about what's coming now to the Supreme Court. So Jamie, to you, can you kind of tee up what is your view of the Supreme Court case coming up from Mississippi? And also there's cases across the whole country. I think the most cases ever filed, and also the Texas case. So why don't you unpack? That's a lot, but we really want to talk about this. It's something we have to hold the line about for women.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll jump in and talk a little bit about the Supreme Court
Thank you.
case that we're currently facing. And I don't know how familiar people are with this case, but right now, what has basically happened is the Mississippi legislature passed a law that would ban abortion after 15 weeks. Now, that's significantly before viability, and that would be opposed to what Roe v. Wade currently protects. The law was signed into law by the governor, but it was considered to be unconstitutional because of Roe v. Wade, and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals struck it down, at which point they wanted it to be seen by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court didn't see it for a long time, but just recently, I believe it was the Monday before this past one, agreed to hear the case. Now, this is very concerning, especially because right now there is a conservative supermajority in the Supreme Court. So there is a actual very real threat that Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned because of this Supreme Court case. And I want to be very clear on what that would mean, which is that many states would immediately, many people in many states would immediately lose the ability to access an abortion. There are about 24 states that would become impossible to get an abortion in if this were to happen. That's because of things called trigger laws, which many states have, that essentially the moment Roe v. Wade would become overturned, abortion would immediately become illegal in those states. They've already passed laws to make that so. And in other cases, like for example, in West Virginia, there are currently unenforced abortion bans on the books that are just not enforced because of Roe v. Wade. So if the Supreme Court case were to overturn Roe v. Wade, we would see a huge amount of people across the country lose their ability to access an abortion basically overnight. And this is obviously a very real concern. And you're right. Right now, we're seeing a lot of challenges to abortion rights and reproductive rights in general. And I think one of the big reasons for that is because they know that we have this conservative Supreme Court that has the ability to drastically walk back a lot of the progress we have made.
Well, this is my question too. I think a lot of people were surprised by this, that they thought this wouldn't come so quickly. And what is your point of view on that? Why now? I mean, why? A lot of people were thinking they would wait till at least, but all of a sudden this just went up. Is there anything in your mind why?
I think that this has been a issue that a lot of people have been thinking about for a long time. And right now, we know that the Supreme Court, if there were to be changes on the Supreme Court right now, Joe Biden would be appointing Supreme Court justices. So there's really no time where our rights are going to be quite as vulnerable as right now with a supermajority. They could even lose a conservative vote because a full overturn of Roe v. Wade is something that even some of the more conservative justices have said that they didn't want to do, that they were more comfortable whittling away at it. For example, Chief Justice Roberts. But in this case, there isn't going to be a better time. We are more likely to see the Supreme Court get more progressive, not less. So
good point. No, I was thinking, I was wondering about that, the timing of it. Jamie, do you have any insight that you'd like to add?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the timing, and then also I want to talk about what this means for the Commonwealth of Virginia. So as far as the timing, the Supreme Court will hear this case sometime this fall. So we don't know exactly when it will be brought up, but October, November, or going into early winter is when we expect to see this case actually argued before the Supreme Court. And then we expect a decision sometime next spring. So the Supreme Court typically releases their decisions kind of by controversial issues later on in the term. So it's likely that we would have the announcement sometime June 2022 of what's decided, but expect this to be a very big campaign issue in Virginia this cycle, because one, this case could be argued right around Election Day, and the result of this year's elections could impact the future of abortion rights in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So right now, we're kind of in the middle when it comes to states. If you look at the maps that are out there, a lot of the South is deep red when it comes to abortion rights. And Virginia in those maps is typically an orange color, in the sense that we don't have anything in our Constitution or in our Virginia Code that expressly protects a right to bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. But we also do not have a trigger ban or a ban on the books that would take effect with the Supreme Court. So really, it's critical who is in power in the Commonwealth of Virginia to continue to protect our rights. And as a result of the 2019 elections, electing this new reproductive health majority for the first time, we have made incredible progress with rolling back years of Republican restrictions on abortion access. But that could flip very quickly if Republicans are elected statewide and the House of Delegates flips. And right now in our state Senate, it's a 20-20 tie on abortion rights access. So the lieutenant governor has the tie-breaking vote, and critical to keep that majority in the Senate in the 2023 election. So we need to work towards protecting the right to bodily autonomy and abortion access in the Commonwealth, whether through a constitutional amendment or through our code. But we are very in a precarious position with this conservative Supreme Court. And the Trump administration appointed over 200 judges to federal courts. So this is not just a 1 or 2 year problem. This is a decades long problem.
No, yeah, it is. And that's the part that really is concerning. First, let me just say that delivering this win in Virginia, I mean, all the work we've done just for 4 years specifically, I'm talking about, to just really get the legislature being the Democratic majority, really does. I mean, we know this. It delivers. We've delivered a lot having that majority, not enough in some cases, because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So we had to switch some of that focus on what we need to deliver for people's, getting out of this pandemic. But for women's health justice and the trap laws that we had here, I mean, seeing those, go was just really amazing for women and for families, and like you said, for bodily autonomy. And you look across the whole United States, and what we're facing is state legislatures are the problem, that we don't have enough power across those for gerrymandering reasons. And it really affects people's lives. And so in this case, with the Supreme Court, I wonder how we're getting ready for it. As people like yourself in NARAL, from NARAL to Planned Parenthood, from even the Democratic Party and different advocates for women, how are we preparing? I know in Virginia, like you said, maybe we'll see more people coming up here for care or whatever, but in general, how are we preparing for this? Because this may happen, and then what's the plan? Do you know, I mean, what?
Well, I'll say that I think that it's really, really important right now for us to be focused on our elections. I think that we're seeing right now how much importance it is going to have that we have a Democratic governor. Right now, we know Glenn Youngkin is going to be the Republican candidate. He's been endorsed by some very scary people, if you're a fan of bodily autonomy, including Senator Ted Cruz and Governor Kevin Stitt, who is the governor of Oklahoma, who had in fact signed into law an almost a total abortion ban. These are the people who are endorsing Glenn Youngkin. It is essential that we keep a Democratic governor who can hold Virginia and keep it the state that we know it is. It's important that we have a Democratic lieutenant governor to break those ties that Jamie was talking about, because we know that in the state Senate on abortion access, it's 20-20 right now. And it's essential that we have a House of Delegates that is strong and democratic, that can continue to make positive, progressive change to make it so that there is affirmative access, not just stopping trap laws, not just stopping bans, but affirmatively promoting access to reproductive health care. So in my opinion, these elections could not be more important. Getting involved could not be more important than it is right now. And we actually, one of our organizers, Sophia Rosales, who's our organizer for Northern Virginia, is on this call, and we would love to see people getting involved with us, getting involved in the elections, and really making sure we're making a difference, because we cannot afford inaction, or we will go this way of Mississippi or Texas.
Jamie.
And one thing I'd like to add is that the whole country is going to be looking to Virginia this year. So we know that we're going to have really tough midterms in 2022, and usually the president's party loses seats. This is an opportunity for us in Virginia to show strong turnout, to show that when abortion rights are on the line, Virginians are going to turn out to support Democrats. And so we need to make sure that we have this strong turnout so that our neighbors and across the country, people can look and see that this is a winning issue and motivates them for 2022.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, that's why we wanted to do these power lunches too, to bring this kind of, to remind people really what's at stake. And I know people have been talking about there's a worry of low momentum, and we know that we have to get voter turnout. But I think that we obviously know that this fight for justice isn't over in no means, right? Because what we saw in Texas and the kind of bills they're putting forward in Texas are also very unusual, where you're allowed to sue. You can sue like just a person, like a regular Joe can sue me for just talking to someone about about abortion, or just saying, and I mean, they're just trying every strategy possible to shut down the idea that we could help women. Obviously their narratives, women need to be shamed constantly. This is that they shouldn't have anywhere to turn for help. They can't even talk to their doctor. Their doctor could be put in jail. This is what we're facing. So for Virginia to be this spot where we show how to fight and how we will not, give up our rights and the progress that we made. And I think we have to light that fire. If we're a little tired, we have to fight for our country. It is Memorial Day weekend, and I will get out my flag and say that, yeah, we do need to do this for people, for our democracy. So I'm so glad you're here to hold the line for women, talk about this. This is so important. So we will definitely keep in touch with what you need. And in fact, why don't you end with a call to action?
Yeah, like I was saying, this is a very, very important year for Virginia for reproductive justice, and we're seeing rights are getting attacked, not just abortion rights. We're seeing, attacks on trans children. We're seeing attacks on gender affirming care, something Planned Parenthood offers. Seeing bans on that. If this is something you care about, if you would like to make sure that you have these rights, that your children have these rights, please get involved, sign up, get in contact with an organizer. Sophia put our organizers in the chat. We would love to have a one-on-one with you and talk to you about how you can help us, how you can help Virginia, how you can help the people in your life make sure that we keep having these rights that we enjoy, and that we don't become like so many of these other states, and we can continue being a beacon of hope for the entire South.
Oh, I like how you wrapped it up, beacon of hope. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Han, for being here. And again, just stay in the room with us. Come on Fridays, because we're going to be talking all summer long about how we're going to bring it home for Virginia. So thank you, guys. And next up, Kellen Squire, ER nurse out in Charlottesville. And you also ran for office. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
How did that go for you?
Well, it was certainly an experience both times. It's a crucible of fire, and it's sort of like you jump off a cliff and you don't know how far down it is until you're already in midair, but obviously it's an important thing to do.
There you go. Yeah, your sound was so I think you sound a little better now. We did hear you though. So good. So what I wanted to bring you on is first of all, thank you for all your work on the front lines in the emergency room with COVID, and I was following your posts about, what that was like. And you just, so thank you for that. But I want to go straight to something, your article about this upcoming election and your view of it. I mean, what I liked in your article, you said, Youngkin is smart enough to not spew that kind of nonsense, right? Going and talking out in the open about stuff like abortion and even things that he may think, would frame him to be a radical or whatever. But tell us what your thoughts are on this race and what you're seeing and what you think about some of the Republican side of how they're going to play this out in Virginia.
Sure. Well, the biggest problem that we have to face is that we're running against people that have situational ethics and engage in moral relativism. I think in that piece I said, I do truly believe that if Donald Trump got up in front of the microphone right now and said we need to nationalize the means of protection to protect the proletariat from the bourgeoisie, that all the conservative commentators, like Ben Shapiro, every politician like Kevin McCarthy said they'd be rushing for a microphone to say what a great idea that was. That had been their idea in the first place. That had been their idea the whole time, right? So when you're up against that, it's really tough because you've got a couple options. One is you can sort of engage in that same behavior, which I would caution us not to do because I don't think anybody can do it better than the Republicans can, race to the bottom. And then number two, it's sort of, you got to make sure that you're not having their argument because we get baited into doing that an awful lot. We get baited into having the Republicans argument instead of having our.
Well, and in fact, we saw a little bit of that the other night on the Lieutenant Governor's debate where they wanted to ask us questions about critical race theory. And I love that the pushback was, that's a Republican talking point. And I think what you're right about reframing it and really pushing back against, this is not what we're going to talk about, right? Or also calling it out right away and kind of trying to flip that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that kind of messaging that we have to run in Virginia?
I mean, I think you're right. I think it gives us a lot of power in a lot of different ways because the traditional hot button topics are sort of out the window too. Anna and Jamie were talking about important stuff about abortion rights, which as an emergency department nurse, obviously I can't go into big. I can say that there's a lot of Republican politicians in Virginia who are probably happy with HIPAA because they can go say one thing and do something else. That's all I'll say about that. But I mean, even I think it was in 2019, actually, I think it was outstanding at a polling place for Qasim Rashid, and I almost got a Republican voter almost got physical with me because he came up and was talking to me about how I could be out there, aren't Democrats baby killers and stuff, and I was like, well, Donald Trump is widely known to encourage his businesses to have abortions. And I just want everybody to have the same access to abortion as he wants his businesses to have. And he did not like that. But the big thing about that is he didn't fight me on it. Like he pretty much was like, yeah, I know that that's true. And so that just speaks again to the fact that, I can deal with and even respect a real small government conservative because I could find even on issues like that, like you can talk about personal individual liberty and stuff, but they're not even conservative that way. They sort of, and they're whatever works for them that they think is going to get them power. That's the end all and be all of everything that they do.
Right. Yeah. No, you're right. You're exactly right. And I know you've run for office and I know that you do know how to talk to voters in your area. So let's talk real quick about how is the COVID, and if you can bring just a little closer, we're having a little problem with your audio. So
Sure.
And tell us about what's going on in the rural areas with COVID and what your experience out there with the unmasking, as we say, and now unmasking of the GOP as well. But what's going on in your area?
Well, I'm lucky enough that I live in Albemarle County, which is, I think, it was the most vaccinated county. I think it got replaced by Goochland and a couple others, but it's right up there in the top 5. So we're lucky for that. I think it's over 50% of our adult population is fully vaccinated, which
good.
Yeah, and it helps. I think I had the first non-COVID shift I've had, since probably January of 2020 recently. So, we have been still getting a trickle of folks who, they come in sick as snot. I think that the subtype that we've identified in this area is mostly the UK variant. I think that's the predominant one.
The UK variant, okay.
Which is, a little more aggressive. And people come in very sick. Inevitably, in the last month or two, it's always been people that haven't been vaccinated, right? They're very, once they're in my emergency department, they're pretty reticent about that. They're like, I really wish I had done that.
Yeah.
We wish you had too, because this sucks. So we haven't had anybody die. We're doing a lot better with keeping that from happening. Obviously, the vaccine works. I've stress tested it personally pretty hard. There's been a few cases that I've been in personally where, a patient didn't present with any COVID things for something completely different. So you're only wearing your, we get into full battle rattle, which is like an N95, and it basically almost looks like a balloon suit kind of thing. But if nobody flags, you can't do that for every single patient, right?
Right.
So I've had it be where they didn't flag for that, and then after hours, they're like, oh, well, great, they had COVID all the time. But again, there was even one case in particular where I was in close proximity to somebody very positive, which we didn't find out. And I did a series of nose swabs, and I never had symptoms, never was tested positive for it.
Which vaccine did you get?
I got the Pfizer. We got it like 2 days after, back in December. So.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, stay with us a second because I want to bring on Sara Ratcliffe to talk about.
Sure.
Sara is running for the seat that you ran in, and you got that seat warm for her. So we appreciate that. And this is the first time you guys are seeing each other.
That's right. We've talked on the phone and we've talked through email, but it's the first time in person, so to speak.
Yeah. So what a word of advice to Sara, and then we'll let you go back to your chickens, Kellen.
Sure. Well, Sarah's actually fantastic. I'm not sure. I mean, she's probably forgotten more about a lot of this stuff, and certainly I knew getting into it. So she's a fantastic candidate, especially for the kind of district that we have out here, which Chaz Nuttyco called, I believe, the most gerrymandered district in the entire Commonwealth of Virginia. So it needs a strong candidate to be able to run for it and take on the incumbent there. Sarah's a fantastic candidate. Exactly.
Sara?
Appreciate that. Kellen was great to me when I was just starting out and trying to figure out whether and how to run. And he certainly stepped in, and after 3 cycles of our incumbent not being challenged at all, Kellen was the first through the wall, so to speak. So I really appreciate his advice and help.
Oh, good. Okay, so Kellen, thank you so much. And we'll say goodbye and hang in the room if you want to stick around. So yes, Sara, just let's go right at it. I love that, first of all, we are running people and we have candidates like you that are stepping up. So tell us about yourself. Tell us about what brought you to run for office and how your seat is looking now.
Thanks. I really appreciate it. It's so great. I've been on the power lunch many weeks, and so it's great to be here. And I've heard many of my colleagues speak. My name is Sara Ratcliffe, and for many years I worked in the Washington D.C. area for nonprofit organizations, and for the last 12 years I worked with Jamie and Han and their colleagues on reproductive rights with a national organization. So the issue of choice and reproductive justice is very near and dear to my heart, and it is an important one that I think we all need to get involved in. But about 5 years ago, while we were in the trenches of whole women's health and the other work and progress we've made here in Virginia on reproductive rights, my husband and I bought a home out in Greene County, Virginia, which is just north of Charlottesville. And we fell in love with this community. We fell in love with the beauty of it and the resources. We fell in love with the community itself. And I really thought, after 5 years of seeing what the Republican incumbent wasn't doing, that somebody needed to step in and challenge him. I was raised in the Midwest, largely by a single mom who had her own challenges, certainly. And my family comes from a rural background. So it really felt like now might be the time for me to step in. Here in the 58th, we are, as Kellen said, very gerrymandered, and it's quite a diverse district. We have folks outside of Charlottesville and in Albemarle County who are much more progressive and super supportive of folks like Cameron Webb and his trying to get through Congress, to get to Congress in the 5th district last time in 2020. But we also have some very conservative folks in the northern part where I live in Greene County, as well as over in Rockingham County across the mountain. So it's a diverse district. We need to talk to people. But one of the things that I learned in my years of working from a faith perspective on reproductive rights was that conversation is where we learn. And it's important for us to understand where people are.
Right.
As I said, I was raised by a mom who had lots of challenges. She had mental health challenges herself and fought to find her rights and her voice and the health that she needed. I've just recently gone through the 3rd of parental end of life journey, and navigating the needs of that is really something that's deeply affected me and my family. And I know what I'm doing. I have been advocating for health access for 25 years. So for folks who need reproductive health, for folks who need mental health, for folks who are dealing with crises and everyday needs of health, it's a really complicated, really difficult system. And that's if you have insurance and money. If you don't and you're left out, it is even more difficult to get the healthcare you need. It's one of the things that I really want to help change. Should I be sent to Richmond?
No, that's great.
I have 30 years of experience working with government agencies and nonprofit organizations. And the things I've realized is that policy doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
People don't live one at a time as much as we care about one or another. And the goal of elected officials is to do more to help. I think that we need to hear more from the voices who aren't heard now in government, and I want to be those representatives who do that. I think that when you have to choose between putting food on the table or paying a doctor's bill versus electricity, or when you can't get your healthcare or your school or your work or your business up and running because the broadband is so bad and so terrible.
The broadband is always a challenge out
you need to solve that problem.
No,
exactly.
Well, we're good. We're great.
So I think that the two things that I learned in my 30 years of working with legislators and in politics were two things. One is that state legislators are the folks who make the most difference in everyday lives, right? They're the ones who make the things that make things work, and they're the ones who make the laws that can sometimes be an obstacle for many people. I've seen many state legislators, including colleagues in Richmond, who work really hard and care deeply about their constituencies, and I think that that's the kind of legislator I hope to be. And the second truth that I've learned in my 30 years is that our vote is the most powerful tool we can use to make sure that those folks work for us. So I'm asking for all the folks in the 58th to give me that trust and that vote. And I'm hoping that folks who are outside the 58th might want to help us move the needle along as we can.
Well, you're in the right place because you know that we have a lot of candidates in the room. If you're a candidate, put your hand up. I know that I saw Fennell Norton is here, and we know we have always candidates visiting us because we plan to try to make sure that we know this election is going to be about the delegates. It's going to drive this race, and we are so glad you're running. So thank you for joining us. And I know we'll stay in touch, Sarah. And so we're just so grateful that you are running. Oh, there's Fennell. Look at all the hands up.
Thank you.
Katie's here too. Oh, awesome. Yeah, all right. So next up is friend Qasim Rashid, author, human rights lawyer, and just in general, one of my favorite people to read and follow on Twitter. Your insights on just, justice in general, and how we have to continue into the fight for human rights, wherever we are and across the country, we see this even with Belarus the other day, the authoritative kind of narrative seems to be across the globe. So welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Catherine. It's such a privilege to be back with this amazing group. Every time I come here, there's a ton of amazing people engaged and involved. Just yesterday, I was on a call, and a gentleman asked, what do we really need to do practically? How do candidates have a chance against these corporate machines, against these well-funded Republican incumbents? How does somebody even fight against them? And I pointed out that it really comes down fundamentally to two things. It comes down to consistency and organizing. And organizing is what you guys are doing right now. And the fact that you have this call every week and the fact that you continue to elevate people consistently is the process. Remember, where we are now didn't happen overnight. It wasn't just, one day we were all hunky-dory and then a couple of ill-minded folks decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead and mess everything up. Let's go ahead and pass all these terrible bills. This is the result of generational injustice. And when you read the words of James Baldwin, of Dr. King, of John Lewis, of Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, the list goes on and on, you really begin to understand how the solution to these is to be consistent, to continue to organize even when it's extremely difficult. And we had a great victory with the White House, winning back the White House, the House and the Senate. But as we can see, as our friends from Planned Parenthood just shared with us, that's not enough. That's not a time to sit down and say, okay, now we've done enough. That's actually a time to accelerate even more, to make sure that we can codify these protections for basic human dignity, for basic healthcare, for basic human rights. And so what I wanted to share, or what I was asked to share today, was kind of a snapshot of what we're dealing with right now and what we need to do to overcome it. While we were on this call just a few minutes ago, the Senate just voted to block the January 6th commission, 54 to 35. 11 Republicans didn't even have the courage to show up. 6 Republicans voted with Democrats, but it obviously wasn't enough to get to that 60 vote threshold to overcome the filibuster, which again reminds us why we need to abolish the filibuster and actually have a democratic form of government, not this minority rule nonsense. And so there's really 3 main things I want to talk about. 1, the voter suppression bills. 2, this insurrection, and 3, kind of what we're dealing with the GOP opposition. Actually, let me start with that one first. Mitch McConnell has made it clear, and this is what he made clear back in 2009 when Barack Obama was elected president, that his goal is not to pass any kind of legislative agenda. It's not to pass any kind of progress or initiative or even a conservative agenda, whatever that might be. It's simply to block everything Joe Biden wants to do. That's it. Joe Biden can say the sky is blue. He'll say, nope, it's brown. No matter what it is, that's just kind of his purpose. And that is essentially what we're dealing with politicians. And I want to distinguish between the politicians and voters, because I still, to this day, even though my campaign ended 6 months ago, get emails from people who say, look, I'm a conservative, and either I voted for you or I wish I had voted for you. Because I'm beginning to realize how these politicians really don't have our best interests in heart anymore. And comments from people like Mitch McConnell to say, I am 100% focused on simply stopping Joe Biden are triggering that. Now, their polling is telling them that helps them with enough people that they can get a core base of voters to come out and feel confident in voting for them. But I think where we need to focus on is, I think Joe Biden's doing it exactly right. The American Rescue Plan, for example, even though it passed on a party line vote, it has over 70% approval from the American people. So it tells us that the initiatives that he's pushing forward are actually those supported by the American people. And we know that because we helped him get elected. We know these are the things that we were fighting for in the first place. So that's one thing, that, we're not dealing with an opposition party that's dealing in good faith. We're dealing with basically an authoritarian regime at this point who's doing everything they possibly can to ensure that we don't have basic human dignity.
So let me just interrupt real quick. You're saying we really got to name it and we got to understand it.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And why? Yes, that is
beating around the bush at this point, right? I mean, let's
you.
call, and that leads me to my second point of this insurrection on January 6th. The old saying goes that a failed insurrection becomes a training exercise. And just the audacity of someone like Senator McConnell to stand up in the Senate chamber on the day of the insurrection and say there is no doubt, none, that Donald Trump is morally and practically responsible for the events of the day, and then refuse to convict him in the impeachment and refuse to hold any sense of accountability during this insurrection bill, while the family members of Officer Brian Sicknick and other U.S. Capitol Police officers are asking for there to be accountability. It goes to show you, they're not actually about Blue Lives Matter. That was really nothing to do with law enforcement. It was simply an attempt to oppose Black Lives Matter or
Right.
oppose racial injustice. And so when we're dealing with this element of the insurrection, it's not just a January 6th event. It's a message that this is okay, that we can go out and do this again. And we're seeing this tested over and over again. Matt Gaetz yesterday, who's being investigated for child sex trafficking, flat out said that if Silicon Valley wants to censor us, we have a Second Amendment and we should use it.
Yes.
This is incitement to terrorism, incitement to violence. And unless we meaningfully stay involved and engaged and hold them accountable, then it's going to perpetuate. And then this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, and then I'll send it back to you, Catherine,
Yes.
is the voter suppression bills. And this part is particularly significant because this is how democracies ultimately get destroyed long term. There have been 404 bills proposed in 48 states, mostly by Republicans, to restrict voting laws. Of those, 25 are already law. It was only 6 in March, and already 2 months later, 25 of them are already law. And you know, there's been a lot of attention on the Georgia voter suppression bill, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. What we're dealing with is the types of bills that the federal appeals court struck down in North Carolina. What happened in North Carolina is after Democrats won and had major gains, the North Carolina Republican-controlled legislature passed a series of bills that, when the appeals court struck down, they described them as surgically devised to target Black and brown voters. What they literally did was they looked at the voting habits of Black and brown communities and said, how can we make it more difficult exclusively for Black and brown communities?
Right.
We know this is when they typically work. Let's restrict voting to those hours. We know this is typically how far they travel. Let's require voting restrictions to make them travel a little bit further. We know typically this is when they get their voter IDs. Let's shut down DMVs at these times. You know, this is where they go to get their voter IDs. Let's shut down these particular DMVs as well. And so what these bills are is designed very specifically and categorically to restrict Black and brown votes. This idea that it's trying to prevent voter fraud or voter suppression or voter or election fraud is all nonsense, because there's no actual evidence that any of it occurred. And I'm not giving my opinion. This is the opinion of the Bill Barr-led Department of Justice. This is the opinion of the Voter Integrity Commission enacted by Donald Trump himself and then disbanded a year later because they could find no evidence of fraud whatsoever. This is the testimony of every single election official, election committee in the United States, that this was the most secure election in the history of the country.
No, right. No, I'm just saying it's like we're living in two worlds, like and this is the part that always just kind of, I say to myself, how do we get through this? Like, how do we penetrate this? Like, you know, this narrative and this lie, and it just confounds me. Like you said, that we have the majority of these bills that Joe Biden's passing. The majority of people want this. People like even HR 1, the For the People's Act. It's even Republicans appreciated some of that bill. But what we have is that they are using the voter suppression because even though we have a majority, they're using all these other techniques, like you said, like from to keep control, because they know without it, they will have no power, right? I mean, if they just have to do all this to keep the power that they need and want, right? I mean,
that's exactly right.
Simple, but it's true. I mean, but it's for me frustrating because I'm thinking, we all know this. So your last takeaway here before is what is your message? We hear it loud and clear: consistency, organizing, staying in the game. And any last words to leave us with about what we're going to be doing this summer, how we're going to stick together and hold the majority here?
Yeah, I think the the key data point I always bring up about the 2020 election is that despite the record number of voter turnout that we had, the single largest demographic of registered voters were people who didn't vote. If they had somehow organized for a third party to elect Big Bird to the presidency, Big Bird would be our president right now.
Right.
So every one of us has a circle of friends who don't vote. We all do. We are all here. I'm preaching to the choir right now. I'm not telling you anything you don't know.
Right.
But
Right.
I would ask you to reach out to those folks in your circle, even if it's just 3 people. Find 3 people who have not voted before and make sure they vote in this primary on June 8th and make sure they vote when it comes time for the November election. If every one of us here can just find 3 people, that's 300 more people that are voting. And I think that's going to have to be the key. When we talk about organizing, it can't just be talking to one another. Every one person here has to be an ambassador to go out and pull in people who haven't voted. If we could do that consistently, then hopefully we'll be able to continue to elect good, solid, compassionate, thoughtful people and do away with the GOP party once and for all.
Yeah, I think we have, as I said, we have to crush this. We have to crush it. And I don't mean it in a, I just mean this.
Well, at the ballot box, yeah.
We do have to do it at the ballot box. So thank you, Qasim, as usual. You brought it this Friday for us and summed it all up and got us motivated. And you can have fun and reading the chat. There's some great comments in there, great ideas, great feedback. And so hopefully you can stick around for the after chat, but if not, we will have you back on, my friend. It's always great to see you.
I have to get to worship services, but I appreciate being here.
Okay, go ahead.
God bless you guys.
Certainly.
God bless you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.
And then I'd love to hand this over next to my good friends, Stair, Calhoun, and Robin. And we are going to talk about holding the line for postcards, right, Stair?
Yes.
All right, so go ahead, ladies.
Yeah.
It's all yours.
All right. So, Robin, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I remember when postcards first got started, I jumped right on board. I rallied my friends and we got up. So tell us about how you got started. I mean, here you are, the most successful state postcard group.
Yeah, well, we started back in 2017 because we thought, this might be fun to do. In 2017, we did about 137,000 postcards. And the minute the election was over, everybody wanted to write for 2018. We doubled it. 2019, we doubled it again. In 2020, we almost did 500,000 postcards just for Virginia. And what we showed in Virginia is all these people across the country started postcard groups as well. So now you've got postcards crisscrossing the country. In fact, I think there's going to be a flood of maybe 500,000 postcards coming into Virginia this week for Get Out the Vote from Postcards for Swing States.
Cool. Let's do that poll that we had wanted to do. So we've got a poll here. Have you written postcards to voters or elected officials?
Yeah, and they're coming on there. With so many people writing postcards, the number one question that we get asked is, do postcards work? And early on, we had a feeling that postcards worked. It seemed like it could make it through the clutter. But over the last 4 years, there's been lots of studies done that show that, yes, postcards do work. Now, they're part of a whole messaging strategy. People get, see things about the election on television and social media, on the radio, through their friends, yard signs. Postcards is just one way we touch people, but it does get through the clutter. And we know that in tight elections, that boost from a postcard can make all the difference. Studies have been done by Vote For It, Sister District, Postcards of Swing States. We claim our vote and they all find the same thing. So let's look at these results and see, well, looks like most of the people out there have written postcards.
Yeah, so as you said, postcards is a great segue into getting involved. And one of the things that I think is also a great outcome of postcards is the community it's built. And there's been so many people who have kept up on Zoom over the last year. So that's really been great too. So let's go ahead and go on to our second poll. There we go.
And the second poll asks, how many of these activities have you done since 2017? written postcards, canvassed, called voters, texted voters, donated to a candidate, helped on election day at a polling location, or ran for office. Go ahead and fill it out. And while you're responding to this poll, one thing that we've learned about postcards is that, well, let me go back. In 2020, at the end, right before the election happened, Postcards for VA asked a bunch of the major leaders out there of postcard groups, and there are dozens and dozens of postcard groups. In fact, it's the postcard groups that continue election after election. And I want to quote Jen Runkle, who runs Postcard for VA Alexandria. She always described it as can't stop, won't stop when it comes to postcard writers, because they're always going. And postcard writers, when I asked them, you know, what are you most proud of? These groups that have written hundreds of thousands of postcards, and they all said the community, that what they were most excited about was the community.
Hey, Robin, look in the chat. Georgia said she wrote 5, the Silver Panthers wrote 5,000.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I put up the, there we go. The poll's working now.
Fabulous. So I would say, even in this election, if you would say postcards build community, and we're seeing that all the time, let me talk about, we are now launching right now for 2021. We've got addresses out there for candidates. So candidates, if you're in the room and we're not writing postcards for you, please contact us at participate at Postcards for VA. We want to support as many candidates as want postcards, because what we know is it's a small bump, but it's a significant bump, especially in an election that might have low turnout. So we're writing for all the candidates, and we do have some lovely new postcard designs, and I want to share those with everyone right now, the designs.
Let me just end
Here
the
we
poll.
go.
Okay, there's the end of the poll. So sharing the poll results. You can just see what happens, that everyone's interested in postcard writing. Thank you.
So here are the new postcard designs. So think about ordering them. We're going to continue to roll out new postcard designs, and you can purchase these at the Badass Boutique, and the Badass Boutiques help support the Friday Power Lunch.
Robin, let's have a different slide here. This is a study slide rather than
Okay.
yeah. This is a very interesting slide as well. I'm going to put in the chat the Badass Boutique link. Here it is. Okay, so look at these fabulous postcards. These were
Oh, they're
designed by you out there. And if you have any trouble getting your postcards, you know who to contact, the big boss.
Oh, the
So,
big boss.
yeah, the big boss. Okay.
All right. And we've put all sorts of information about postcards, but now we are going to transition from one favorite topic to the next.
Whoa, I love
So
transition.
not only is this postcard season, it is also Women Summit season.
Yeah, and I'd like to say something about this results. I see that 95% of our attendees have donated to a campaign. So look at us, throwing money in it too, which is always great. So yes, we're transitioning to the summer of summits, because today the Power Lunch is about holding the line. And what we found in the grassroots when we came together in 2017, that like Qasim said, it was about organizing, and we're trying to figure out what we needed to do. We needed to elect candidates, we needed to elect delegates, and that was 2017. We ran the board with, we had 35 people that were standing up to run, and we supported the 17 of those that needed our help, and we were able to flip like 11. I think we flipped, how many seats that year? Was it 16 or 17 in 2017?
15, the first
15.
year?
That's right, 15, because we had the Shelley Simons and
I always like to add, and 11 of them were women.
Exactly. So what we knew is we had to organize, and part of that was trying to figure out how we build this community, like Robin said, with postcards. So we came up with this idea of the Women's Summit, and it's been going strong. We had our first one in 2017. We organized it in 70 days. Hello. And we were able to have a fantastic event with all the delegates. We had 35 delegates on the stage. And that's when we started really organizing and building out this community. And we've been consistent now doing it every year. And every year we're like, you know, okay, let's do it again. 2018, we did it. 2019, we had 1,000 people at our event. And then last year, because of the pandemic, we did an 11-day online virtual event that was freaking fabulous. But we felt, again, that the consistency did matter. And really what mattered to making the change that we see now with the Blue Trifecta is that we were bringing people together and that community is really important to sustaining this blue win, and it'll be exceptionally more important and crucial, not only through the postcards, because that builds community, but us really staying in the game, staying motivated, and so we can definitely hold the majority here in Virginia. So the Summer of Summits, we're not going to do the same thing every year. We change it up, and this year we're going to do a hybrid event because we want to do a little bit of the virtual still online. We know our butts are tired of sitting on Zoom for a long time. And we know that come summer, with the amount of people vaccinated, that not everybody is looking for these long, you know, online events. So we're going to do a hybrid event where we'll have virtual learning and we'll have in person. So here you'll see on the screen that we're going to do the Summer Summits kicking off in June. And that will be, you can see the date here with like June 22nd, we'll have some trainings. I won't go through all the dates, but our in-person in Nova, mark your calendar, will be June 25th, Friday, and June 26th with an afternoon canvassing and maybe an evening event. These are definitely just our targets right now. So make sure you do mark down June 22nd through the 26th will be our first Summer of Summits activity. And then we go to July, and we want to go out to Harrisonburg to show our rural friends that we are coming out there to meet with them. And yes, Virginia is huge. We had to pick one place where we can go to, and it's drivable. Harrisonburg is perfect. They've built a great hub over there, the Democratic Party. So that will be July 17th through the 24th. And you'll see that we'll have the online component, which has some morning trainings on a Saturday. It has July 20th with some evening training, and July 22nd with some evening trainings. And then the in-person, we hope you drive out to meet some of the candidates out there. And we're going to try to do canvassing and just drinking beer and hanging out, listening to music, and making sure that we get everybody involved. So that will be our July component. Then we move into August, and we want to go where it's going to be hot. And where we know it's going to be hot is Virginia Beach. So we want to make sure that by then we're going to know a lot more about what needs to happen on the ground in Virginia Beach. And many in this room are from that area. So we hope you join us. Those dates, as you see, the actual in-person date will be August 14th, but our online training will start August 10th and August 12th. And then our in-person is the 13th through the 15th. So you don't need to memorize that, but we want to show you what it's going to look like. And then, of course, the pricing. Generally, to get a ticket to the summit, general admission is going to be $40, only $40. We kept it very inexpensive to do this event. And give me a COVID break. If you can't afford the $40, well, you get a special price of $25, because we are mindful that we need to make sure that all people can make it to this event. And if there's an issue, let us know. We have sponsorship available for that. And also, if you want to be a summit supporter and come in at the $100 level, that is a supporter, almost sponsorship kind of look at that. We appreciate the support. So you can buy that higher ticket price, because that goes to us to help people that can't afford to come. And then for our Patreon supporters, well, you get a special discount if you're a supporter, and that we will send that special code to you, and you can sign up that way. And of course, people that bought tickets, when did they buy tickets, Robin? January of 2020.
and 20 before COVID.
Before COVID, they bought a ticket, and because the virtual was literally a great event, they're going to get 2 events. The people that came in with that ticket, you will also just be able to roll into this one at no extra charge unless you want to. Sure, why not? But you will get a code also sent to you so you could register. You will need to register if you bought a ticket way back then. So that is sort of the bird's eye view of our summer of summits. You can see our colors, and we're coming at it with a bunch of fire and fun, and we're just going to make sure that this summer we keep everybody engaged and in this community. So that's about that wrap up. Any questions in the chat? Stay for the after chat. So with that, I'd love to thank all of our guests for being here. If you're not a patron, please do sign up and subscribe. It really helps us out. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, YouTube, and all that good stuff. And I hope today that you'll go on Twitter and tweet out what you learned. I think we should tweet at Qasim, like consistency and organizing, right? Those are 2 things that really have been sticking with me today. And I think he's absolutely correct. So we hope you stick around for the after chat. And why don't we roll the credits, unless I'm forgetting something, Robin. Next week, we'll see you in the room. No teaser, just come on.